Have you ever had that feeling? That persistent hunch that something important is about to happen in your life? Perhaps you feel it as a flutter in your stomach when you wake up, or as an inexplicable certainty that you're on the threshold of a major change. According to Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists in history, that sensation isn't coincidence or superstition. It's your unconscious communicating with you, preparing you for a transformation that's already underway. Today we're going to explore what it really means when you feel something big approaching, and more importantly, what you should do when that sensation enters your life. This knowledge, based on Jung's profound teachings, could be the difference between merely surviving changes or using them as catalysts for your personal evolution. Think for a moment. How many times have you ignored that inner voice, that intuition warning you about something, only to regret it later? Jung dedicated much of his life to studying these signals and discovered that our unconscious is much wiser than we believe. Unlike Freud, who viewed the unconscious primarily as a repository of repressed desires, Jung considered it a source of wisdom, creativity, and guidance. For Jung, that feeling that something big is approaching is what he would call a manifestation of synchronicity, seemingly random events that are connected by meaning, not by causality. It's as if the universe is whispering in your ear, preparing you for what's coming. The question is, are you listening? We live in a world that has taught us to distrust our intuition. We've been told that what we cannot see, touch, or measure doesn't exist. But Jung invites us to question this limitation. He observed that the most fulfilled people were precisely those who had learned to listen to and trust those subtle signals emanating from within. When you feel something big approaching, the first thing you must understand is that this sensation is a gift. It's an opportunity to align with your true self, with what Jung called the self, the organizing center of your psyche, your purest essence. This sensation doesn't arrive by accident. It comes because something inside you is already changing, evolving, preparing to make a quantum leap in your personal development. But here comes the crucial part. To harness this transformative energy, you must be willing to do something that few have the courage to do. Choose yourself above everything else. And this, my friends, is much easier said than done. Choosing yourself means daring to listen to that inner voice, even when it leads you in directions that challenge others' expectations. It means having the courage to say no to what no longer resonates with you, even if you've invested years of your life in it. It means essentially honoring your truth above comfort, security, or social approval. Jung observed that most of the neuroses and psychological problems he treated in his patients had a common root: the disconnection between the person they pretended to be to please others and who they truly were in their essence. This internal division is what he called the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, or ignore because they don't fit with the image we want to project. When you feel something big approaching, it's very likely that your shadow is trying to communicate with you. It's trying to show you aspects of yourself that you've ignored, but that you need to integrate in order to move forward. If you ignore these signals, if you continue repressing these parts of yourself, the internal tension will keep growing until something has to give. And believe me, when the psyche decides it's time for a change, it will find a way to let you know, whether through vivid dreams, meaningful coincidences, or even crises that force you to stop and reassess your path. So what exactly should you do when you feel something big approaching? The first, and perhaps most important thing, is to stop and listen. In our hyper-connected society, we rarely give ourselves time to be truly present with ourselves. We go from one activity to another, from one notification to the next, without ever allowing ourselves that sacred space of silence, where we can hear what our soul is trying to tell us. Jung recommended practices like meditation, keeping a dream journal, or simply sitting in silence in nature. Any activity that allows you to disconnect from external noise and connect with your inner world. Because it's there, in that space of stillness, where the answers you seek will begin to reveal themselves. The second step is to pay attention to your dreams. Jung considered dreams as the royal road to the unconscious. Unlike the Freudian interpretation that saw dreams primarily as expressions of repressed desires, Jung viewed them as direct messages from our unconscious, trying to communicate vital information for our growth and evolution. When something big is approaching in your life, your dreams often become more vivid, more memorable, and loaded with symbolism. Archetypal figures may appear: the sage, the warrior, the child, the mother, each bringing a specific message for you. Or perhaps you dream of situations that reflect your deepest fears or your highest aspirations. Whatever the content, the important thing is that you begin to pay attention and, if possible, record these dreams in a journal. The third step involves confronting your shadows. As I mentioned before, the shadow contains all those parts of ourselves that we have repressed or denied. It may include traits that we consider negative or unacceptable, but also talents, desires, and potentialities that we have ignored because they didn't fit with our adopted identity. Jung taught us that to become whole, to individuate, as he called this process of self-realization, we must be willing to look at our shadows directly, without judgment or rejection. This requires brutal honesty with yourself. It requires you to ask, what parts of myself have I been denying? What aspects of my personality have I repressed out of fear of rejection or failure? When you feel something big approaching, it's very likely that these repressed parts are struggling to rise to the surface. They're demanding to be recognized, integrated, and expressed. And while this process can be uncomfortable, even painful, it's absolutely necessary for your evolution. The fourth step is perhaps the most challenging. You must be willing to let go of what no longer serves you. This may include relationships you've outgrown, limiting beliefs that no longer represent you, or even aspects of your identity that you've constructed but that no longer resonate with who you're meant to be. Jung observed that many people cling to situations, relationships, or identities out of fear of the unknown. They convince themselves that it's better to stay with the familiar, even if it's painful or limiting, than to venture into unexplored territory. But when you feel something big approaching, the universe is inviting you to take precisely that leap into the unknown. It's telling you that there's something better waiting for you on the other side of fear. In my experience working with thousands of people in transformation processes, I've noticed that those who achieve the deepest and most lasting changes are the ones who have the courage to let go, to release not only what obviously doesn't work, but also what seems good enough. Because sometimes good is the enemy of extraordinary. Now, letting go doesn't necessarily mean cutting ties or making drastic changes in your external life. Sometimes what you need to release are internal patterns, ways of thinking or responding that no longer serve you. It might be that critical voice that constantly tells you you're not enough, or the belief that you must sacrifice your happiness to be accepted or loved. The fifth step is embracing uncertainty. Jung understood that real growth involves venturing into the unknown, into those spaces of your being that you haven't yet explored. And this, naturally, generates anxiety. But that anxiety isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's an indication that you're growing, evolving, transforming. When you feel something big approaching, it's normal to feel a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement for the possibilities opening before you, and fear for what you might lose in the process. Jung would teach us that both emotions are valid and necessary. The trick is not allowing fear to paralyze you, but using it as a compass that shows you exactly where you need to grow. There's a Jungian concept that's particularly relevant here: the tension of opposites. Jung believed that our psychological growth occurs when we're able to hold the tension between seemingly opposing forces in our psyche without suppressing either of them. In the context of feeling something big approaching, this means embracing both your desire for change and your fear of it, both your longing for the new and your attachment to the familiar. The sixth step involves trusting the process. Jung had a deep faith in the innate wisdom of the psyche, in its natural capacity to seek balance and integration. He observed that when we allow this process of individuation to develop naturally, without too much interference from our controlling ego, transformation occurs organically and perfectly synchronized. This doesn't mean you should sit passively and wait for life to happen to you. On the contrary, it means you should actively participate in your own transformation process, but from a stance of curiosity, openness, and trust, rather than fear, resistance, or excessive control. When you feel something big approaching, you can trust that your psyche is already orchestrating the necessary changes for your evolution. Your job is simply to be attentive, follow the clues presented to you, and take those small brave steps in the direction your intuition indicates. The seventh step, and perhaps the most impactful in the long term, is to begin consciously creating the reality you desire. Jung was one of the first psychologists to recognize the powerful connection between our internal psyche and the external world we experience. Through his concept of synchronicity, he showed us how our internal states can manifest in seemingly random external events. When you feel something big approaching, you have a unique opportunity to consciously align with the direction of that change. Instead of being dragged by the current, you can begin to actively visualize the outcome you desire, to emotionally feel it as if it were already happening, and to act from that place of internal certainty. This isn't simple positive thinking or superficial visualization. It's what Jung would call active imagination, a conscious dialogue with your unconscious, a collaboration between your conscious will and the deeper forces of your psyche. When these two aspects of you work in harmony, a magnetic field is created that literally begins to attract people, situations, and opportunities that resonate with your vision. I've seen this principle in action countless times. People who, by tuning into that sensation that something big is approaching and consciously aligning with it, experience transformations that would seem miraculous to the outside observer. Relationships that heal, careers that take off, life purposes that reveal themselves with crystal clarity. But here comes an important warning. This process isn't always smooth or pleasant. Sometimes, for something new to be born in your life, something old must die. And that process of death and rebirth can be painful. It may involve periods of confusion, loneliness, or even crises that seem to shake the very foundations of your identity. Jung observed that many profound transformations are preceded by what he called the dark night of the soul, a period of disorientation and anguish where it seems you've lost your way. But he also noted that these crises are often precisely the portal to a higher level of consciousness and realization. When you feel something big approaching, prepare for the possibility that the path won't be linear. Prepare for moments where it seems you're moving backward instead of forward. But trust that, if you remain true to your inner truth, these apparent setbacks are actually necessary readjustments, clearing the path for your evolution. The eighth step involves reconsidering your relationships. Jung deeply understood that our relationships are mirrors, reflecting aspects of ourselves, both conscious and unconscious. When you're in a transformation process, it's natural that your relationships will also begin to change. Some people who have been in your life may feel threatened by your growth. They may try, consciously or unconsciously, to keep you in the role you've always played for them. Others may celebrate your evolution and grow alongside you. And some new people may appear in your life, as if by magic, bringing exactly the energy, wisdom, or support you need at this moment. Jung would teach us to observe these dynamics without judgment, recognizing that each person in our life is playing a role in our individuation process. Some are catalysts for our growth, others are mirrors showing us aspects of ourselves we need to see, and others are simply traveling companions for certain stages of the journey. When you feel something big approaching, it's a good time to honestly evaluate your relationships. Ask yourself, who really supports me in this transformation process? Who seems to resist my changes? Which relationships nourish me and which drain me? And perhaps most importantly, what aspects of myself am I projecting onto others instead of integrating them? This last question is particularly powerful. Jung extensively developed the concept of projection, our tendency to see in others aspects of ourselves that we don't recognize or accept. For example, if you're intensely irritated by people you perceive as selfish, you may be projecting your own unrecognized selfishness. If you're magnetically attracted to creative people, you may be projecting your own unexpressed creativity. Recognizing and reclaiming these projections is a crucial step in the individuation process. It allows you to reintegrate parts of yourself that you've externalized, becoming more complete and authentic. And curiously, as you reclaim these projections, your relationships often transform in an almost magical way. The ninth step is connecting with your deepest purpose. Jung believed that each of us comes to this world with a unique purpose, a specific contribution we're destined to make. He called it our personal myth, the story we're here to live and tell. When you feel something big approaching, it's often because you're getting closer to greater clarity about this purpose. Perhaps you've been living someone else's story, following a script you didn't write, and now your soul is calling you to reclaim your authentic narrative, to live the myth that truly resonates with your essence. This purpose rarely reveals itself complete and detailed all at once. Rather, it unfolds gradually as you follow the breadcrumbs, those small clues, intuitions, and synchronicities that guide you. Sometimes it manifests first as a discomfort with what you're currently doing before the right direction becomes clear. To connect with your purpose, Jung would recommend paying special attention to what energizes you and makes you lose track of time. Those activities where you experience what we now call flow, a state of total absorption and natural joy. He would also suggest exploring recurring patterns in your life, themes that keep appearing again and again, as if the universe were trying to show you something important. The 10th step, and one that Jung considered essential, is cultivating a connection with something greater than yourself. Jung observed that those who most successfully navigated deep personal transformations were those who maintained a connection with what he called the numinous, that dimension of experience that transcends our rational understanding and connects us with the mystery and wonder of existence. This connection can take many forms. For some, it's a traditional spiritual or religious practice. For others, it's a deep communion with nature, art, music, or philosophical contemplation. What's important isn't the specific form, but the humble recognition that we are part of something vast and interconnected, something that sustains us even in our darkest moments. When you feel something big approaching, this connection with the transcendent becomes especially important. It provides you with an anchor, a stable reference point while everything else seems to be in flux. It reminds you that, although you may feel temporarily lost or confused, there is a greater intelligence working through you and for you. Jung himself experienced profound periods of transformation and crisis in his life. After his break with Freud, he went through what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of several years where he deeply immersed himself in his inner world, exploring dreams, visions, and fantasies that he initially feared might indicate he was losing his mind. However, instead of fleeing from this disturbing experience, Jung had the courage to surrender to it completely, maintaining just enough objective distance to document the process. What he discovered during this period formed the basis of many of his most important theories and profoundly transformed him as a person and as a therapist. This is perhaps the most important lesson we can learn from Jung when we feel something big approaching. Instead of resisting or fleeing from transformation, we can choose to consciously surrender to it. We can choose to trust the wisdom of our psyche in its natural impulse toward integration and wholeness. By making this choice, we don't guarantee that the path will be easy. In fact, it almost certainly won't be. But we guarantee that it will be authentic, meaningful, and deeply transformative. As Jung himself wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." So what should you do when you feel something big approaching? Choose to become who you truly are. Choose to listen to that inner voice that has been whispering uncomfortable but liberating truths to you. Choose to let go of what no longer serves you, face your shadows, and trust the process of your own unfolding. Because in the end, that sensation that something big is approaching isn't just a premonition about external events. It's a call from the soul to awaken, to expand, to reclaim parts of yourself that you've denied or repressed. It's an invitation to live not from fear or external expectations, but from the radiant truth of your authentic being. And although this path may seem lonely at times, remember that you're not alone. Millions of people around the world are awakening, feeling that same call, navigating their own transformations. We're in this together, each playing our unique part in the evolution of collective consciousness. So the next time you feel that restlessness, that inexplicable certainty that something important is about to happen, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it as meaningless anxiety or idle fantasy. Recognize it for what it is, the voice of your wiser self, inviting you to take the next step in your journey of evolution. As a community, I want us to share our experiences. Have you ever felt that sensation that something big is approaching? How did you respond to it? What transformations have you experienced as a result? Leave me your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this message has resonated with you, if it has illuminated something within you that was waiting to be recognized, share it with someone you think might benefit from it. Sometimes, all we need to take that first brave step is knowing we're not alone in what we're feeling. Remember that this channel is a space to explore these deep truths together, to support each other in our individual and collective journeys. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and activate the notification bell so you don't miss future videos like this one. The transformation you feel approaching isn't something you should fear. It's something you should embrace, with all its challenges and possibilities. Because, as Jung taught us, it's only through facing the unknown that we discover who we're truly meant to be. The future is calling you. Will you have the courage to answer? The decision, as always, is yours. But remember, when you finally choose yourself, when you honor that inner voice guiding you toward the new, you don't just transform your own life, you contribute to the transformation of the entire world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage, your openness, and your willingness to grow. I'll see you in the next video as we continue this journey together, step by step, transformation by transformation, miracle by miracle. And remember, as Jung would say, be the change your soul is asking for. The world needs you, complete, authentic, and fully alive.